Hello, I'm Gillian Wallager. Put your feet up, put the kettle on. It's time for one more thing. All right, no, it's not. All right, I admit it. Hello, it's Charles, the editor of MacNN. I'm taking over this week. William's a busy boy. I can't do it. First of all, I don't have the biscuits necessary, and I'm just generally no good at tea. More of a coffee drinker these days. In any event, though, I welcome you are in fact listening to One More Thing. And I do have our esteemed co-host, an actual UK resident, Malcolm Owen.
Hello, I'm still here. You can't get rid of me that easily. If I even flub that line, it's proof that I'm real.
Exactly. I'll bet your William Gallagher impression is better than mine.
No. No.
Never mind. We do have a few interesting things to talk about. This is a little bit adding on to one of the topics that we covered in depth on the main MacNN podcast. But the moment we record that, it's out of date because new things are constantly happening. Just get right into it, talking about the FBI-Apple dispute. If you haven't caught up on that, we have several ways for you to catch up. The first one is once a week we're doing a written summary of what's happened over the last week called Where Are We Now? And it seems like we're going to have to do this once a week for a little while. It'll probably slow down eventually. The other thing we've just done is a video that will explain it for you. So for people who, don't like to read... Malcolm, tell us a little bit about this video. You played Johnny Ive in the video doing the voiceover in that sexy tone of yours.
Yet again, not a sexy tone of voice. The video, which we've put up on Monday, is a 7-minute explainer, a TLDR in video form of all the main points between the San Bernardino shooting and the kerfuffle between Apple, the tech industry, and anyone who has some sort of power through voting or some sort of electoral process. So we've done a video on that, explaining up until the congressional hearing that took place last week. What happened, who said what, why did they say that, why are they wrong? Just stating the facts, ma'am. Is more an accompaniment to the more in detailed summary that we've done on the site.
And even since this video was put out on Monday, we've had a couple of more developments. And by the time you hear this, there will have been some more that we can't anticipate. But on Monday, Apple software chief Craig Federighi wrote an article in the New York Times, an editorial, talking about exactly why Apple is fighting this judge's order that essentially amounts to, and to be fair, the judge didn't quite realize this at the time, I don't think, but essentially amounts to creating a backdoor to weakening the security on an iPhone. And why that's important and why people should have a vested interest in making security stronger, not weaker. Even, and this is the important point, even if it makes law enforcement's job harder. That's the tough selling point, because naturally we want law enforcement to have the tools they need, particularly in very, very serious crimes. But the problem here is that you can't just unlock a single phone. By creating an unlocking tool, you have created an unlock for all phones. Because, as FBI Director James Comey said himself, people keep their lives on this phone. Now, FBI Director Comey said something about he fears a society in which everything is so double down encrypted that the FBI or even a judge cannot order it be decrypted through any method. A warrantless space for your stuff is the way he put it. But this is exactly what civil libertarians and Apple feel is the goal. And the reason for that is not because they're diametrically opposed to the FBI's goals, but because, to put it as simply as possible, either everyone has security or nobody does. The FBI has suggested rolling back security to where it was in iOS 7 before Apple was doing whole disk encryption. And the problem with that is that hackers have already broken that security. This is a good reason to upgrade if you haven't already. They've even commercialized some of the attacks used. There is a constant race between Apple or any other provider of an encrypted device and the people who would like to break that encryption in some way. That's the problem. It's not a black or white, easy decision to make, and although we can line up on one side or the other, there are valid arguments on both sides. And that's, of course, why you need more adults talking. Sadly, they seem to be in fairly short supply these days.
If you want to hear the backstory behind what's happened to lead up to this point, you can go and look at the MacNN Newsroom on YouTube to see the video that we produced, or you look at the article itself, which will have the video embedded in it. The article title is New MacNN Video Summarizes FBI Apple Dispute.
All right, we could spend the entire half hour talking about this case. Let's talk about something else, anything else. How about, I know, on Monday, a ton of Apple betas came out. The 6th beta for OS X, iOS, and watchOS. This feeds into the rumor that there's going to be some sort of big event on or around March 21st. My guess, if I had to guess, would be that Apple will release the updated betas just before this event, if it exists. We haven't gotten our invite yet. Apple. One of the features that I've been trying out right now, I'm running the iOS 9.3 beta on my iPad at the moment, is a feature called Night Shift. This is pretty cool. I've talked about it on the MacNN podcast briefly, but what it does is it actually lessens the amount of blue light coming out of the iPad over time, starting at sunset, wherever you are, and moving on into sunrise. The practical effect is your display gets yellower and yellower, more sepia sort of colored as you go on into the evening. But the reason it does this is very key. It's supposed to reduce eye fatigue at night because you're in different lighting situation than you would be during the day. And it also helps you to rest, to sleep more easily than if you've been staring at a super bright blue light LED for much too long, as everybody on our staff does, and probably you do as well. It seems like a very cool feature. Other things in iOS 9.3, they're going to improve the navigation feature of the Apple Pencil on the iPad Pro.
Whoa, hang on. Navigation feature on the Pencil.
Your ability to use the Apple Pencil to navigate the iPad Pro.
Oh, I thought you were saying something along the lines of the Apple Pencil has a GPS built into it nowadays.
Apple must know where your pencil is at all times.
What do you do? Just balance it on the end of the finger and it finds due north?
No, sorry. There's also a feature that allows you to pair multiple Apple Watches to a single phone. In both iOS and in the forthcoming OS X 10.11.4 will be a feature that comes in very handy and is relevant to our previous discussion, and that is the ability to secure individual notes in the Notes app. You'll be able to lock those notes, and you must use either a passcode or Touch ID to get into these secured notes. You can also have unsecured notes, but they can mix and match, so it's very nice. Live photos, support for social media, things like that. And the Apple Watch in watchOS 2.2 is getting an all-new Maps interface. More information, more business information from Yelp, and the ability to set preset destinations so that you can just say to your watch, "Hey Siri, take me home," from wherever it is you happen to be, and it will call up directions to your house from there. Pretty nice. I expect these will be out sometime in mid-March, around an event, or not. We don't know. So moving on, speaking of legal matters, Apple has suffered a big legal loss. Although it's hard to judge exactly how big a loss it was. The Supreme Court has basically refused to hear Apple's appeal on the ebook settlement, and so as a result, Apple is going to have to pay out $450 million or so, which is a lot of money to you and me, but a day in Apple world, to pay off the fines for allegedly, and I use the term allegedly because they never did prove this at all, but allegedly assisting publishers to price fix the cost of ebooks a couple of dollars higher than they turned out to actually be in order to help break Amazon's monopoly. And of course, the government hates it when you try and do their job for them. Or I don't know what the motivation was there, but it's all based on a misinterpretation of a Steve Jobs email, if you ask me. But I'm not the judge. The courts have spoken, and that's the way it is. Apple guilty of price fixing and leading a conspiracy among publishers, even though they're not a publisher. Fine, whatever. So Apple will pay this fine. They've already gone through the antitrust monitor that promised to rehabilitate their policies, and so they've essentially said, and we won't do it again. And hopefully that'll be the end of it. But my issue with this is that it leaves Amazon as a practical monopoly. And more importantly, as we've reported many times before, it leaves Amazon in such a position of power that they can abuse that monopoly, which they do. It is odd to me. There was enough evidence there that Apple may not have been fully cognizant of the law when they did what they did, and you could make a case out of that as they did. But why the Department of Justice doesn't seem to be concerned about Amazon's issues, and if you don't know about it, ask any publisher. Why they don't seem to go after that is a mystery. But apparently, Apple throws some money at the problem and the problem goes away. Is the way the Department of Justice wanted it handled. It has thus been handled. We'll see what the long-term effect is for ebooks, but it's nothing good. This really just gives more power to Amazon, and not that Amazon's evil or anything like that, but they tend to abuse their position a bit because ebooks is one of the few areas in which they have a massive advantage over everybody else.
I do have to point out that this is one of the few times where I've seen a settlement where it's actually beneficial to the end user for once.
Yes, well,
because we're looking at a settlement of total $450 million,
right,
in theory. 400 million of it goes to ebook customers. 20 million goes to the various states that said, hey, this is bad, boo, hiss, boo, give us money.
Right.
And they're doing $30 million in legal fees. So that sounds like quite a good distribution.
Well, it is a much better distribution than usual. It seems like an appalling amount of money for what the lawyers actually had to do to prove the case, but fine. But yes, it's an above average. And this is one of the things that Apple insisted on is, look, if we're going to have to pay money, then we want most of that money to go to consumers. That was actually an Apple demand. And the judge agreed that the lawyer fees should be limited, so good on the judge as well. But there's so many consumers affected by this that if you are one of them, you can look forward to maybe $10 in a voucher for a future Apple iBook, probably. So,
well, it depends on how they actually divide it out.
Yeah.
If they're doing it by each customer gets a fixed amount of money, or are they going to do it by individual sales?
That's the question. And of course, we'll find out those details once the settlement has been actually acted upon. But chances are that it was negotiated to be a blanket settlement that affects all potential customers who may have been overcharged, in air quotes, overcharged. But I think the bottom line here is nobody's getting rich off this except the lawyers, as usual. Sadly, I don't think the general situation will improve. Maybe now that this case is settled, maybe the DOJ will go back and look and say, you know what, Amazon, you're being a bit of a bully. Maybe. We'll see. And as we're talking about Amazon, there's actually some brand new news about Amazon. Malcolm, what do you got?
Amazon's opening its second physical bookstore.
Oh, that's right. They had one in Seattle, I believe.
Yeah, they opened one in November last year. It's quite a normal-looking bookstore. Looks like it's kind of like Borders, but not quite. It's a room with shelves and books in it, you know, like a bookstore normally is. But they do things like stocking the store based upon Amazon sales data, customer ratings, sales totals, Goodreads popularity, and so on. That's what they did with the first store. The second store is basically the same thing. You walk in, there's actual books, there's customer reviews on the shelves. You can pick up your Amazon Kindle, Fire Tablet, Echo, or whatever hardware they've got there. They've put it in San Diego Mall, or Mall. How do Americans say mall? Is it mall or mall?
Mall, as in attacked by a bear. Mall.
Mall, okay. So it's located in a San Diego attacked by a bear, opposite an Apple store and next to a Tesla store.
Oh, well.
So if you wanted to get your MacBook repaired at the same time as looking for a new car, you can actually buy a book while you wait.
What's the matter? The Microsoft store went out of business? Normally, Microsoft tries to put their stores as close to the Apple store as possible. That's nice. Apple, Amazon. The neat thing about the Amazon store is that they use the same pricing as they do on the site. So there's a good chance to get a good bargain in there once in a while. We'll see how that works out. They're going very slowly and cautiously. There was a report that we had that they were planning to open hundreds more across the United States in a big move. But it seems like they're taking the slow and steady approach, which may work out better for them.
You know, it might actually sound like that they're worried that there may be some website out there that will work against the store in terms of being able to offer cheaper products or being able to offer things that they could easily be bought and delivered at home. There might be some online store out there that might cause them to worry about that.
Could be.
Yeah.
The thing about Amazon that fascinates me is that they don't make any money. And that doesn't seem to stop them, which is kind of odd. We'll see how it pans out, but you can't keep losing money indefinitely. Sooner or later, the piper will come a-calling. Speaking of the piper coming to call, we've run a story about a Bittorrent client called Transmission. Now, before I get into this at all, let me just make clear. Yes, Bittorrent can be used for perfectly legitimate reasons. But let's also get real for a second and acknowledge that that's probably 2% of its traffic, and that it is mostly used to pirate things. This week, Transmission, which is a Bittorrent client that hadn't been updated in years, suddenly got a new update, version 2.90. According to the people who make it, the disk image to be distributed out on their server got swapped out with one that had malware embedded in it, ransomware, in fact. And about 6,500 people had downloaded it before they discovered this problem, switched it to a clean disk image, and they've now updated Transmission to version 2.92, which not only updates the program itself, but also removes any malware that may have been installed by the 2.90 version. So that's good. In addition, Apple has revoked the certificate of the developer, and in addition, they've updated XProtect, their anti-malware built-in tool in OS X, to protect against it, presumably for people running 10.9 or later, because Apple only goes back so far with this stuff. But they didn't say how far back they've gone with this. Ransomware is the worst kind of malware. It's not a virus. Viruses are something different, but ransomware, what it does and what this ransomware tried to do was it would encrypt your audio and video files and other media types, as well as try to encrypt your time machine backups so that you couldn't even recover the files from there. Luckily, whoever coded this was not very good at their job, and so that didn't work. But nevertheless, it would encrypt your stuff, and in order to decrypt it, you had to pay a ransom. I hope somebody at the FBI is taking notes, because this is exactly the kind of attack we're going to be getting a lot of if they get their way. Anyway.
To be fair, we're already getting a lot of these attacks over on Windows.
Well, yes, it's been a plague on Windows and to the lesser, I think to some extent Android as well, for some time. But this is the first example of a native coded for Mac ransomware. We've seen them before in pop-up windows that claim that you've got a virus and you have to call this security number and blah, blah, blah. But they don't hold your hard drive hostage. This was going to hold your hard drive hostage. I commend Apple for moving quickly on this. I commend the people behind Transmission for moving quickly on this, but it was clearly their fault that this happened in the first place. They didn't secure their server. And we're going to see a lot more of this. So we need to be on guard for this sort of thing, even as quickly as people can respond to it and nullify the threat. Ransomware is a very ugly thing. The weird part, though, to me, Malcolm, is that this ransomware wanted 1 Bitcoin. That was the ransom. You had to pay 1 Bitcoin to whoever this was in order to get your stuff decrypted. I don't think, this is just a general impression, but I don't think the Mac community as a whole has really embraced Bitcoin the way other communities have, other platforms have.
I don't think that really matters, because bearing in mind the number of people who got affected by this on Windows, not just talking about people who are well-versed in getting away from such horrors online, we're talking normal people who have to go out there and go, what's a Bitcoin?
Yes.
And then having to spend hundreds of dollars. At the time of recording, 1 Bitcoin is the equivalent of $412.61.
Really?
Yeah.
Still doing that well.
And the horrible thing is, it's at that price, which it is just enough to warrant actually paying to get your data back. But you have to consider whether you really want to do that or not.
Yeah.
If you've backed up securely elsewhere, and this is yet another reminder to everyone, back up your stuff.
Yeah.
If you've backed up elsewhere enough, then it's less of a problem. But it's frustrating.
Yeah, it really is. And in particular, the extra step that these guys attempted to go through, which would be to encrypt your backup so that you couldn't recover from it that way. That's sinister.
That's actually quite standard.
Well, I know, but it's sinister. Just not fair. The whole thing is a mess. And I hope that there's more activity in fighting this going on in the various communities. Luckily, Mac users now face a very low chance of this. But if there's nothing else that we've learned about this, one is the BitTorrent community is kind of bad news. I'm sorry. I'd like it not to be, but it is. For most typical users, it should probably be avoided. The second thing is obviously keep your backups up to date. I know it wouldn't have helped in this case if they'd been successful, but backups are better than no backups every single time. And third is that this is yet another reason to keep your OS version up to date. As I say, Apple stepped in and updated their XProtect file But presumably, they only go back with that so far. So if you were running a very old operating system, you may still be at risk here, particularly if you didn't get the memo. You don't listen to this podcast. Well, why am I talking to people who don't listen to this podcast? But you didn't get the memo to update your transmission copy further. It's a sad realization that there's more attacks from more vectors coming all the time, and these guys will use every crack they can find to get in there. So keep your guard up, even if you're a Mac user. Our days of being complacent about threats like this is over. It's over. Let's go on to Thingy of the Week. I'm used to rattling on for like an hour or so. So we got to wrap this up. Malcolm, I know I volunteered to do the Thingy of the Week, but if you had one, do you think you know what it would be?
The problem I have is for the last week or so, I've been having to go through a house move. So I've very quickly had to shift everything, my office, my bedroom, everything that I own. I've done almost all of it. There's like straggling little bits behind that need to be moved over, but for the most part, I've moved everything.
Oh, congratulations! That's and apparently you didn't have to give pizza to anyone, so that's impressive.
I know, it's amazing. No, I'm staying somewhere else, so I'm having to borrow their furniture as well because I don't own furniture except for a bed, but I've had to leave that behind for obvious reasons. But I have worked out that I could probably fit all my stuff into the back of a transit van.
Wow.
So all of my stuff could fit in a transit van, probably including the bed.
Goodness.
That is a sad existence, that all my stuff fits into such a tiny amount of space.
Well, you know, I live not far away from a town called Vancouver, and Vancouver is a pioneer in giving you less apartment space for your money than ever before. Every year, it seems like they come up with a new way to give you less space. They're down to about, it used to be the standard was 370 square feet was a bachelor apartment, but now they've revised that downwards to about 250 square feet.
Wow.
I actually saw one of these places. They had one here in Victoria that I toured, and I was like, so this is an apartment for people who never expect to have friends over, ever. There wasn't even room for a bed. It had to be a Murphy bed. That's how small it was.
Wow.
Yeah, it was tiny. I can't even remember the exact rent, but it was a lot, let's say, for that.
To be fair to them, I would have thought that anyone who's staying in a city like that, like Vancouver, who is a bachelor, would probably only use their bedroom for sleeping in.
Well, that's it, right?
And possibly other activities that we won't go into here. But it's basically going to be a stopping point for where they pass out for 8 hours or however long and then wake up ready for the next day of work. After work, they're probably going to be going out somewhere, probably to go to the gym to get pumped up or whatever it is the kids do, and to eat out and then just come home and pass out. They're not going to do that much staying in and Netflix and freezing or whatever it is.
Yeah, or exactly the opposite. They never leave the house. You know, they live in a virtual world. They're all in Second Life all the time. These VR helmets are going to be the death of large apartments, I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, I mean, the key here is it's a bachelor apartment. It's not it's not a couple's apartment. It's not a family apartment. Although, imagine that.
Yeah. This is the thing, is that the price of those goes up when these bachelor apartments get invented. But my rule of thumb is if I could probably get more space by going to prison, that's bad. That's not inspiring me to stay off the streets.
Speaking about that, I have just realised that because I'm having to use one large room as my office and bedroom for the moment, this actually works out to be a lot more space than the room I used for an office and the room I used for a bedroom in the old place.
Oh, well, there you go.
This is actually bigger.
Huh.
How did this happen?
By the way, just for those people who have been listening regularly, how many of your cats are making the transition? Are they staying at home?
For complex political reasons, I cannot go into how many cats are going to be moving with me because I'm going to be moving again in a couple of months, hopefully.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, I'm hoping to move to a city and then I'll get a place of my own. If I can get a mortgage, I'll be able to bring cats with me. If I can't get a mortgage and have to rent somewhere, I will be crying because I won't be able to.
Yeah.
But no, none of the cats have made the transition to here. They're still in the old place.
Right. I think you mentioned once that place that you're in now has animals already, but not any new ones.
Yes.
Well, good luck, and especially good luck in the city move, because I think that will make your internet connection so much more reliable.
You have no idea. We sat down and worked out that our entire package that we have for TV and internet and everything is just horrible out here. We worked out we're paying £35 a month for Sky. Mm-hmm. So that's your TV package, right, but through satellite. We're paying somewhere in the region of about £50 or £60 a month on average for the phone line and the internet connection. Yow.
That's pretty high. Mm-hmm.
And then I looked at places in Swansea, which is the city I want to go to.
A great place. Yeah, great place.
Yeah. They have a company called Virgin Media out there. Mm-hmm. And it's a cable. And they are currently advertising 200 megabit connections. Here's one thing for you. 200 megabit compared to what we got out here, which is somewhere in the region of 16. And we're supposed to be having fibre in the old place, but we couldn't get it because they've enabled it, but for the wrong half of the village. But yeah, 200 megabit in Swansea.
All right. Well, we shouldn't put the cart before the horse, but I hope that works out for you. And I look forward to the day when you are drunk with internet.
Oh, no, this is drunk with internet. The entire package, TV and internet, 75 quid.
Oh, there you go.
That is cheaper and faster. Why couldn't we have this out here?
Much more in line with typical pricing.
Yes.
Yeah. Last but not least.
Hang on. No. You haven't done it. You haven't done your bit. I get to do this. What's your thingy of the week, Charles?
Well, I'm glad you asked. My thingy of the week is a product I'm testing now, and it's going to be reviewed later, but I'll give you a little sneak preview of it now. It's a new power case for your phone, in my case, an iPhone 6S, and it is exactly what it sounds like, a battery pack that fits onto your phone, along with a special case that you can because you can separate the battery pack away when you don't need it. And it's from a company called Prong, and the reason they're called Prong is because their cases have one feature that most don't, and that is built-in mains connectors, built-in electrical chargers, so you can plug the battery case straight into the wall with the phone in it or not. It will charge the phone and the battery at the same time. The case itself provides about an extra day's worth, a full 100% charge of the battery. Now, I'm not one of those people who has a long commute to work, so I don't need a battery as much as some people do. But it is getting to the point now that people who live on that phone, who use it heavily for communications, for FaceTime, for gaming, for messaging, and all that sort of stuff, do find themselves running out of battery towards the end of the day. And so a battery case is starting to become a thing. Apple has entered that market, and others have already been there. The Prong case I like because it gives you all the options simultaneously. You can go without the battery case. You can go with the battery case. You can plug it in. So you have it all right there at your fingertips. As with all battery cases, this adds a bit of bulk to the phone when you have it in there. But what's nice is that when you don't need it, you can just take the case out, and it's just a nice little bumper case with a sort of plastic clear protector on the back. So you can see the entire iPhone, unlike a lot of cases. And that part doesn't really add any bulk at all or weight. So it's really nice. It's only when you put the battery pack on that you suddenly feel it. Now, I have big pockets on my pants, and that's where I keep my phone. Attention thieves, that's where I keep my phone. It's in my front pocket. So when that case is on, I do feel it a bit. It's a bit heavy, but it's doing its job. This is an unavoidable problem with battery cases, is they add a lot of weight. Nevertheless, it seems to work great. I love the idea that when I do happen to be near a plug, I can recharge them both. When I'm not, I've got a full day's extra battery.
I've got this wonderful mental image. Where are the prongs, by the way? Are they on the back or on the side, or?
Oh, the prongs are on the back, and they fold down flat.
Okay.
Until you need them, and then you can pull them out. Yeah, it would be awkward if they were upright all the time.
Oh, no, I'm thinking more along the lines of one of the worst things you can do with a plug, especially with the UK plug, is to have it fall on the floor. Because of that, how the construction of a UK plug is, it always lands with the back against the floor and the pin sticking upwards, and you will almost always step on it.
Right, like a Lego block, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you have prongs on the back of that, and it was the UK plug's prongs instead, I can imagine someone dropping their phone on the floor, prongs coming up, someone standing on it, and they're screaming in pain for two different reasons.
Yeah, quite. Nope, the people at Prong have thought that out. It's almost impossible for that to happen, so... Very nice. It's a nicely designed product, and if you need a battery case, certainly one of the ones you should look at. Apple's has some advantages that this one doesn't. This one has some advantages that Apple's doesn't. Well, the kettle's on, and Masterpiece Theater's on the TV, so I'm afraid it's time for us to go. This has not been William Gallagher. And we've appreciated our chance to talk with you for a little while on episode 29 of One More Thing. That's Malcolm Owen in Wales.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from me. Thank you very much.
Why on earth did I wave to the microphone there?
Goodbye, a little Queenie sort of wave. Hello.